Hey guys, what's going on? Drewzy here, and today I'm coming at you with yet another brand new Smite video. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the mage class, my top 5 damage mages currently in Smite at this time. Currently, right now, we are at update 4.10 right now for the console when I'm making this video, so of course this will be subject to change. There will be new mages added in the future, most likely into Smite, so at this time, this right now is my top 5 damage mages currently in the game right now. So again, it's going to change. There's going to be more people added, but there are a ton of mages to choose from. I really wanted to focus on the mage class after I did my hunter video, and mostly due to the fact because there's a wide variety of mages and there's a lot of different options that I could have gone with the top 5, but I decided to go with overall damage, CC, things like that. So all these gods, in my opinion, are good in almost all match types. I'm going to give you my top 5 obviously, and then I'm going to give you some suggestions on items like I did in my previous top 5 video. So we're going to go ahead and start with my number 5 god on the countdown. So coming in here at number 5, I went with Nuwa, and this one was the hardest decision that I made in this top 5 breakdown. Was my 5th god. There were a couple different gods that I debated between, but I went ahead and went with Nuwa for a variety of different reasons, and I will explain that of course as we go along in this top 5 video. But I went with Nuwa. So I mean, you can argue, you can debate, and you're probably going to debate a lot of these god choices, but some of them, in my opinion, the top 3 that I choose are pretty much self-explanatory. But again, Nuwa made my top 5, and one of the main reasons was her ultimate. Her ultimate, Fire Shards, devastating. It hits every single god on the map, regardless of where they are, except if they're using, Sanctuary, essentially, to stop it from taking the damage. But the Fire Shards, just the fact that it will hit every god, doesn't matter what the heck they're doing. Even if they're in midair, they're still going to take that damage. So that, to me, just the ultimate alone puts her above a lot of other things. Then she's obviously got her fog. Her fog just does a ton of damage to minions. It also does a ton of damage to gods if they just ignore it, which a lot of gods technically do. So I mean, you can just poke them with that fog damage. Does a little bit of damage over time. It does tick damage as well. Then her clay soldiers is very nice. You throw them out there, they'll poke at enemies, do a significant amount of damage, and then when you combine it with her shining metal ability, which is her 3rd ability, which here, it will stun the gods hit if you explode the clay soldiers with shining metal. So I mean, the fact that you can get that explode damage, it's going to do a ton of damage, that explosion will. And then of course her passive will stun after 5 consecutive basic attacks. Her 6th one will then root the enemy. So obviously for the damage output that you want to focus on, you're going to hit her with the ultimate. You're going to want to use shining metal. Generally you're going to want to throw that around because the cooldown is very low on it, but you're going to want to use it generally with clay soldiers. So now, with using those abilities, I'm going to give you some items that I would suggest you use with Nuwa. For the first item that I'm going to suggest the Spear of Desolation, and the reason why I went with Spear of Desolation is for a couple of different reasons. Number 1, it's going to increase your magic power, which is very, very nice. It's going to increase your magical penetration, which is extremely useful for her ultimate, and then it gives you the cooldown reduction again, which is very viable for the ultimate. So with these 3 things, Spear of Desolation, they've really done a nice buff to it. They've made it a lot more, do a lot more damage, in my opinion, in some of the updates that they've done in Season 4. So that would definitely be one of the items that I would highly suggest that you use with Nuwa. We're going to be scrolling through here. My second item would be Rada Tahuti. And the one reason with Rada Tahuti, again, it's just going to give you a huge magical power buff, and then it's going to give you that mana per 5 seconds increase as well to get her mana to kind of regenerate as well during the fight. But Rada Tahuti, a devastating damage boost to any ultimate for a mage, especially for Nuwa. Chronos Pendant also extremely, extremely valuable. Get that extremely high cooldown reduction, get that nice boost to magical power, and of course more mana per 5 seconds increase as well. So with Chronos Pendant, Rada Tahuti, and Spear of Desolation, those 3 specific items really make Nuwa a very viable god in any game mode, in my opinion. So those would be the 3 that I would highly suggest you use with her. But of course there are a couple other different ones, but with those 3, you're just going to do a ton of damage with Nuwa in any game mode. So we're going to go ahead and move on to my 4th god on the countdown. So number 4 on the countdown, I went with Alposh, and one of the main reasons why I went with Alposh is because he does a devastating amount of high area damage. And one thing you're going to notice with pretty much every god going forward in this countdown is they do a high area damage and that is one of the main reasons why they're able to pump out so much damage. So Alposh, very viable in basically every game mode in this game. Maybe not so much in Conquest. He is a good, mid laner, but with the fact that he doesn't have any escape can then make him very vulnerable in that game mode. But in every other game mode, he's a very viable god. And one of the main reasons is Unhallowed Ground gives him huge sustain ability, gives him mana back, gives him health back when he sucks up the zombies that he shoots out. Empty of the Crypts, his ultimate, devastating damage-wise, does a ton of damage, slows as well, especially if you get Gem of Isolation with it. Empty of the Crypts, if you have a situation with a god that pulls, it's really, really good. You're going to want to then spec these abilities together. You're going to want to hit them with Fleeting Breath. The Fleeting Breath then does tick damage, which is a huge thing. You're going to want to cast that first to be able to do the most amount of area damage to one specific god. Then the second item you're going to want to hit him with is Undead Surge. If you hit him with that Undead Surge, you're going to stack those zombies that he then explodes with Corpse Explosion, which is his second ability, with those two items, with those two abilities spec together, and then you Corpse Explode. All of that damage is just unrelentless to any god that it hits, and it's just going to do an insane amount of damage, folks. I'm telling you, with those three abilities spec together, he's just going to obliterate just about everybody. But again, he doesn't have any kind of escape, which makes him very vulnerable in certain game modes. So hit him with the third ability first, then hit him with Undead Surge, and then of course hit him with that explosion when with all those bodies piled up. You're just going to do a ton of damage, and use that ultimate as much as humanly possible to really do the most damage with Alposh. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some item suggestions as well with Alposh. So here we go with the first item. So of course for item number 1, as mentioned in the abilities, was Gem of Isolation, and the main reason for Gem of Isolation is that slow. It's very, very viable and very necessary in my opinion for Alposh to be truly effective. You need that Gem of Isolation, you need that extra slow. It's going to give you a nice boost to magical power. It boosts health now instead of mana. It used to boost mana before Season 4, they changed it to health, which hurts him a little bit, but it's still super, super useful. I would highly suggest using Gem of Isolation with Alposh as one of your 3 items that I'm going to suggest here for you. Now at this point you have a little bit of flexibility as far as the penetration that I'm going to suggest, but I like Spear of the Magus, and one of the main reasons why I like Spear of the Magus is because of the fact that it uses abilities to do more damage when you use an ability, more so than some of the other penetration items. Spear of the Magus isn't a necessity, in my opinion, to pump out a ton of damage. You can use Spear of Desolation, which is to its right. You can use Obsidian Shard, which is on the far right, because the Obsidian Shard does more damage to gods. Spear of the Magus is going to help you do more damage overall with your abilities. As you see here with Obsidian Shard, it just does that extra magical penetration, but it only works on gods. It does not work on minions or camps or towers. So Spear of the Magus, in my opinion, is the better penetration item for Alposh, just because he is mostly an ability-focused god, and with ability-focused players, it's just going to help you do way more damage. So for item number 3 here, Book of Thoth, and one of the main reasons for Book of Thoth is going to give you that extra mana that you no longer get from Gem of Isolation, and it gives you a nice boost to magical power initially, plus you get stacks that give you even more magical power. So Book of Thoth, highly useful. Spear of the Magi, very useful. And, of course, with Gem of Isolation, Alposh will devastate. So we'll go to number 3 god on my countdown. For number 3, I went with Zeus. And, I mean, this god is self-explanatory to be easily in this top 5. Zeus does a devastating amount of area damage. Does a devastating amount of damage overall to gods, more so than minions. He is a terrible minion clear in my opinion, especially when they lowered some of his damage output with his second ability. But Zeus, very viable in every game mode. His major weakness, however, is movement speed. Zeus is extremely, extremely slow, but he just pumps out so much damage that oftentimes he doesn't need to get away because he can just obliterate you before then. And Lightning Storm, his ultimate, is absolutely devastating. But one of the main things you want to focus on is Overcharge. You want to focus on getting the charges on enemies. With Overcharge, you get it from your basic attacks, you get it from Lightning Storm as well, and you get it from Chain Lightning, his first ability. So those 3 but those three things will cause overcharge, which gives you the stack, which means more damage is inflicted on people with charges on them, and then you're going to want to detonate those charges to do an amazing amount of damage to any god that you hit them with. So again, Lightning Storm, that ultimate, you cast it, it's going to do up to 3 ticks of charges, and generally you want to use that with a god that can contain, like an Odin ultimate, an Ares pole, Daji poles now, things like that. You want to have gods that are contained to do the most damage with Lightning Storm. You can even kill gods trying to get into the base with it, but again, you're going to want to make sure you do that with low health enemies. Detonate charge, you're going to want to detonate as much as humanly possible with Zeus. I'm going to be coming out with an attack speed build with Zeus that I have that I think is just devastating, and I think you'll see when I post that video here in the future. Aegis Assault is his Chain Lightning is one of his major abilities, which will cause the charges again. It also slows and does damage to minions as well as gods. So you're going to want to throw Chain Lightning as much as possible. You're going to want to pair that with his Aegis Assault. Aegis Assault does a good job of clearing minions. You can do a good amount of damage initially to a god. They did lower the initial damage that it causes in an update early in Season 4, so it's not quite as strong as it used to be, but it's still viable. It's still definitely useful, so you're definitely going to want to throw it out generally as much as possible. Mana might be a problem with Zeus, so be careful with that. You may run out of mana a lot, but use Chain Lightning. Throw your Aegis Assault as well a little bit. Then you're going to want to make sure that you have, your ultimate, use it as much as humanly possible, but detonate is your key item. You're going to want to have detonate on cooldown. Focus on your cooldown to be able to detonate your lightning chain and use your overcharge, or to detonate your overcharge, essentially, detonate that passive to do just insane damage. So those are the abilities for Zeus. Let me go ahead and give you some suggestions on items I would suggest you use with him to be the best with him. So for item number 1, I'm going to obviously say Chronos Pendant, just because you need that cooldown, in my opinion, to pump out the detonates that you really need when you have a charge on someone with Zeus. You really need to be able to detonate as much as possible, and Chronos Pendant is easily the best way to do that out of any item that's available currently in the game. So you're going to want to use the Chronos Pendant, just because it gives you nice buffs to a lot of different things, but mostly for the cooldown more than anything else. Rada Tahuti is extremely nice for Zeus, because a lot of my fellow Smiters argue that Zeus, if you just pump out enough damage, you don't have to worry about getting out of the fight. So with Rada Tahuti, you're just going to do a devastating amount of damage, because it gives you a ton of magical power boost, and boost to overall magical power with other items. So Chronos Pendant, Rada Tahuti, that whole side of that tree, essentially, pretty much an easy go-to for any Zeus player if you're going to want to use those items. A secret item that a lot of Zeus players don't use, Hasten Vitalis. One of the main reasons why I suggest Hasten Vitalis gives you a nice buff to attack speed and a nice movement speed, because you need to be able to move around faster because Zeus is so fucking slow. He's just so slow. Hasten Vitalis gives you a nice buff to movement speed and the attack speed, again, because you want to get charges on people, so you want to be able to hit people with your basic attack or with your chain line, and you're going to need that attack speed so that you can detonate more often. That is one of the reasons why I think that attack speed build works so well, because you just get so many charges to then detonate. So Hasten Vitalis to me is a secret item I would highly suggest with Zeus. Typically not a go-to with most mages. Poseidon it kind of works well with, but with most mages you're not going to see Hasten Vitalis. It's going to be rare. But with Zeus, I feel like it's almost a necessity, just because it gives you a nice boost to attack speed and movement speed, two key items I think a Zeus needs to be the most effective. So those would be the items I would suggest with Zeus. So we'll go ahead and go to my number 2 god on the countdown. So for number 2, I went with Toth, and one of the main reasons why I went with Toth is because he just does an insane amount of high area damage yet again, and he's not a god I see very often when I play, because I play a lot of Arena. That's usually the mode I play the most, but in all objective-based modes, in my opinion, Toth does so much damage. He's good in every game mode, maybe not so much in Arena. Arena's probably his weakest mode out of all of them, but in all the other modes, especially Assault, things like Clash, he's very good in Conquest, but he's good in Joust as well. He's just good in mostly in lanes. Lanes are his dominant area where he excels the most, and he just pumps out so much damage in a lane setting. So obviously you don't want to be with Thoth. You're going to be back behind other, gods to then use him to his ability. Now, some of his abilities are a little hard to explain. Glyph of Pain is an ability that some people do not understand how it totally works. It does not make you get more damage as far as allied gods, you do more damage through it as Toth, but they do not. Your abilities do more damage through Glyph of Pain. It also increases the attack range as well, which is the main thing that it does for allies. So don't you think that Glyph of Pain helps all the gods in your team do more damage. It does not work that way. Please stop thinking that, because if you do, you're just stupid. It only makes your abilities better. And then Hieroglyphic Assault is his main damage that he's going to be pumping out. He shoots 3 different glyphs out, and generally you want to use Glyph of Pain with all of his abilities to increase the range and increase the damage for yourself. So, pull down Glyph of Pain first, then use Hieroglyphic Assault to pump out all that extra damage. And it goes through enemies, so it'll hit multiple gods, it'll hit multiple minions. It's a great minion clearer. You're going to want to clear minions to get his passive up. So, you're just going to want to use Hieroglyphic Assault as much as possible. Evade and Punish is really nice because it helps you get out of trouble. You can also use it to initiate and stun the first god hit. So it's very nice to then use that in a variety of different situations. Generally, I use Evade and Punish to get out of danger, not so much jump into danger, but I've seen people that really know how to use Toth very well to be able to use Evade and Punish to then initiate and do that initial damage and stun that it does for 1 second. So, Glyph of Pain first, Hieroglyphic Assault, Evade and Punish, and then you're going to want to also be able to use Final Judgment, which is his ultimate. Final Judgment is one of the strongest ultimates in the game. It does a ton of damage. The problem is that Final Judgment is hard to hit with, so you're going to want to charge Final Judgment. It's a charged ability to do the most damage with it. And you can cancel it anytime. That's the nice part, is that you can cancel it, but you're going to want to put Glyph of Pain down so Final Judgment goes further and does more damage yet again, because I've seen people do over 1,000 damage with Final Judgment if they hit with full charge and through Glyph of Pain. So Final Judgment just obliterates people. It can one-hit enemies. It's insane the amount of damage that it can do. So Glyph of Pain is your most important ability that you're going to want to put down to boost yourself, boost your damage, and boost your own survivability as well, because you can use Evade and Punish to go through Glyph of Pain to get out. But with Dead Reckoning, you're going to get increased penetration stacks for your stacks, which your stacks increase as you level up throughout the game, but then killing minions or killing gods help build your stacks. So kind of like having Book of Thoth, which is an item that is available in the game. It's kind of like using the same thing, focusing on killing minions, focus on getting those stacks, which, Thoth works very well with stackable items as well. So Dead Reckoning, it's just by default. Give him a stack item, it just makes sense. He has a freaking item named after him in this game. So, again, using Glyph of Pain, then you're going to want to use Hieroglyphic Assault to do the most damage. You can use Evade and Punish to stun, then hit with Hieroglyphic Assault or Final Judgment. All those things, they're just going to do a ton of damage with Thoth. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the items that I would suggest you use with Thoth to do the most damage with him. I feel like this item is self-explanatory for the first item I'm going to suggest because it has his name in it. Book of Thoth, again, an item that you're really going to want to use with him. Stacking items are great with him because he's going to need to clear minions to get his passive up anyways, so you might as well give him an item that gives him a ton of mana and a ton of extra damage with a stackable item. So Book of Thoth is a necessity for Thoth users. It doesn't matter the game mode, except Assault. Obviously you can't build stackable items, but if you're not playing Assault, Book of Thoth is your go-to item. Again, if you're playing Assault, Soul Reaver is your best bet as well. You can also use Soul Reaver as well as Book of Thoth in any game mode. Soul Reaver does a nice job to boost the abilities, which again, his abilities do the bulk of his damage. You're not going to be focusing on basic attacks with Thoth, you're going to be focusing on his abilities. So with Book of Thoth, this is the one I would suggest with almost every single game mode except for Assault. If you're in Assault, Soul Reaver is your go-to. But you can use both items in this tree or one or the other. Both are very, very viable. But I feel like Book of Thoth is going to give you the most damage potential in any game mode outside of Assault for obvious reasons. For his penetration item that I would suggest, you have a little bit of flexibility, again, similar that you did with Alposh. But Obsidian Shard, because of his passive, he gets that more penetration. I feel like Obsidian Shard excels his extra penetration damage because you're going to get more magical penetration by default with the passive in Obsidian Shard. So I would highly suggest Obsidian Shard. That's the one I would think would do the most damage out of all these. Spear of the Magus, again, would be very nice because he's an ability-made user. I've seen Spear of Desolation work very, very well with him. So pretty much everything in this tree works pretty well, but in my opinion, if you're going to want to pump out that damage, you're definitely going to want Obsidian Shard. And then Rod of Tahuti would be another item I would highly suggest with Thoth. That's just going to help him do that extra magical damage, because again, you're trying to focus on abilities, you're trying to do as much damage as humanly possible, and if you want to do the devastating ultimate damage, you're going to need Rod of Tahuti. That's going to be a must-need item. So those are the items I would suggest with Thoth to do the most damage with him. So we're going to go ahead and look at our last and final god, and our number one god on the countdown. So coming in number one is, in my opinion, not only the god that does the most damage in Smite as far as a mage, but the easiest god in the entire game. If you're first time playing the game, use this god. This is the easiest god in the entire game to learn this game with. It is Kukulkan, because Kukulkan does a ton of damage. He has great abilities to help a new player play and even an experienced player play. Kukulkan is great in all game modes. He just does so much damage. He's so good for helping teammates with CC, with the ability to, distract people, mostly because of this ability number here, Whirlwind. Whirlwind does a ton of damage to enemies because of the tick damage that it does over time. It does up to 5 ticks for any god that it's hit with, unless you use, something to block the damage that he's taking, but it just does so much damage. Whirlwind is so good, and it's a great way to clear minions. It's a great way for you to learn the mechanics of the game. Again, Whirlwind, so much damage, one of the highest damage abilities in my opinion in the game, because you can take a god from a ton of damage to none. So for Power of the Wind Jewel is his passive. This is, people I think misconstrue this and don't use this correctly. He gets magical power buff for the maximum mana he currently has. Use items that give him extra mana to do the most damage. You get a default magical power buff, people. Please, just do it. Just focus on, just give him some mana, some items that give him additional mana. It's very self-explanatory. I don't know how that's difficult. So again, Whirlwind, just ton of damage. I mean, it just does so much damage. Please, use Whirlwind as much as humanly possible. Cast it all the time. Zephyr is a nice, it shoots out, it clears minions, it does a good initial damage to gods, and it just shoots straight out, straight forward. It'll go through. It won't go through people, but it'll hit the first god hit, which is good for clearing out minions. You're going to want to clear out minions because you're going to generally use stackable items, mostly due to the fact that because you need that extra mana. So Whirlwind, Zephyr, great at just doing tons of nice, damage to gods. His super stream there, his second ability, is an escape that helps him get out of danger. So you're going to want to use that whenever, a god is chasing you or something like that. It can help him get out. But you're going to want to use Whirlwind, you're going to use Zephyr, and you're going to use Spirit of the Nine Winds. Spirit of the Nine Winds is his ultimate. A little bit harder of an ultimate because there's a slight delay to it, but does a ton of damage if you hit a god with it directly. So it's great if you use an Ares, use someone that pulls or contains. You can then use that Spirit of the Nine Winds to smack someone in the mouth and do so much damage. This is probably one of the harder ultimates to really connect with in this game. So, obviously, if you can hit with this ultimate pretty consistently, I think it will help benefit you in your confidence level going forward throughout Smite. So again, this is the easiest god in the entire game. You can debate that. You can comment below if you disagree with me, but I think it is. I mean, I don't think there's really any argument here, just with the amount of damage he can pump out, the fact that he has an escape as a mage, and the fact that he, if you just build him correctly, can just devastate the battlefield. Doesn't matter the game mode. In my opinion, Kukulkan is so useful in every single game mode. He's easily one of the best gods in this entire game. I mean, so just use Zephyr, use Whirlwind, use Spirit of the Nine Winds, focus on his passive, use his passive correctly, get something that gives you additional mana, and I swear to God, you're going to do so much damage, you're not even going to know what to do with yourself. So, those are some of the ability breakdown. Now I'm just going to talk to you about some of the items I would highly suggest use with Kukulkan to make him just obliterate everyone. First item I'm going to suggest is easy yet again, Book of Thoth, mostly due to the fact that it gives you increased mana with each stack. You need Book of Thoth to give him that passive buff, also to give you more mana so you can pump out more abilities, because his cooldowns are pretty good. So, I mean, you're just going to want to be able to have enough mana to just keep pumping out that damage, keep pumping out those abilities. Book of Thoth is a necessity for Kukulkan, people. Please use it. If you don't use it, you're just hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself, you're hurting your team, and you're going to be way more effective. You're going to do way more damage with Kukulkan with Book of Thoth. Again, if you're in Assault, you can't use Book of Thoth because you can't use a stacking item. Soul Reaver is your go-to. Yet again, similar to Thoth, is those two items Or you can use both items in that tree yet again, because it gives you a nice boost to mana plus 300. So it's going to give you a nice boost to your passive, and it gives you a nice boost of damage with your abilities with Soul Reaver. So Book of Thoth, Soul Reaver, can't go wrong with either of those two items. Those would be the first two items I would easily suggest. For the number 3 item that I would suggest, it would be Chronos Pendant. And the reason why I'm going to say Chronos Pendant is because you need the cooldown reduction to be able to pump out Whirlwind as much as possible, to keep doing that damage, to be able to use Zephyr more often, and be able to use your ultimate the most often. Because his abilities are what do the damage. He's not a basic attack mage, he's an ability mage. That's where he does the bulk of his damage, so you're going to want to be able to use that cooldown to your advantage. You're going to need Chronos Pendant, you're going to need mana buffs. Those are the 3 things that you're for sure going to need. So, you know, with those two items for sure, it's really going to help you. Gem of Isolation, not a necessity anymore. It was a necessity before Season 4 when they had mana instead of health. But when they added health, it lost a little bit of its viability. People aren't using Gem of Isolation as much with Kukulkan. But I still think it's a great item. I still think it really helps him. I think that slow is still extremely useful for him to help that Whirlwind slow people down. They stay in the Whirlwind more often, then you're able to do more damage, and it slows them to where maybe you can hit them with a nice sneaky ultimate from behind or something like that. So I still like Gem of Isolation. But again, because you lost the mana, it hurts you. Warlock Sash gives you the mana. It's a great stackable item. You can double stack with Kukulkan. He's one of the few gods, in my opinion, that double stacking really works for the best. Warlock Sash and Book of Thoth are the 2 stacking items you want to use. He's not... People use his passive thinking you just build stack items. That's not what you do. That's not how that works anymore. But with those items, that's the best way you're going to be effective with Kukulkan. So there is my top 5 damage mages currently in Smite as of right now in the game. So let me know below in the comment section how you think about my top 5 video. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please subscribe to the channel, because I'm trying to grow this channel as best I can. Really enjoying the feedback I'm getting so far. Really enjoy keep making these videos for you guys, but the support I would highly appreciate. So this video was a little longer than some of my other videos. I apologize for that. So let me know again what you think of the video, what you think of the top 5. And so this is Drewzy. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.